All right. Welcome to the Elmer's Corner. Our Elmer's Corner is part of RaRa's educational programs for communicating with the new and seasoned licensees. Another means of communicating is through our Groups IO, which you can find on our website. There's about 109 members on that you can share information with. A few housekeeping. You may edit your name and add your call sign. I mentioned that earlier to the ones that came in late. The top right hand part of where you see your name or photo, you can select the three dot icon and select your rename. And then we'd ask you to put your call sign in there at the end. Ask everyone to keep their mics muted unless you have a question for Larry. Uh, Please locate the chat function in the bottom of your screen. If it's way down, if you're not filling your full screen or you're using a tablet or a smartphone, you may have to scroll a little bit. The chat function, you can put questions in there. I got it. Three more people admitting here. All right. You can put your questions in that, and I'll answer them or interrupt Larry for your questions or your comments. Ask everyone. You may submit questions using the chat function. Okay, I lost myself by admitting people here. If you don't care to type here, you can also raise your hand using the Alt key on your keyboard and the letter Y. That raises and lowers your hand. So some people they don't type well and they just want to click. You can do that. So we're going to get started here and turn this over to Larry Keene, KD2LGX, and he'll give you a little biography of what he's doing, and then he'll start his presentation. Thank you very much. Larry, it's all yours.
Very good. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name's Larry Keene. For those of you who don't know me, my call is KD2LGX. I was originally licensed in 1973 as WA2KJE as a novice, and worked my way up to a general class operator with 13 word per minute code before I got involved in other things and let my license lapse and got out of the hobby for 40 years or so. So I'm back, and I was able to get my my extra license thanks to RaRa and going to RIT. And I'm not sure of John's last name, but I believe it was John from RaRa. I'm not sure if you know who that is, Tim. I know you do. The extra class teacher.
Oh, John Vigiano,
Yes.
MV2K.
Yep. So, I learned a lot of things and I was able to pass my extra the first time. So I decided to get into satellite communications first, pretty much as a predecessor to Earth, Moon, Earth communication. I remember one time I told my father-in-law, I said, you know what, John? I said, one of these days I'm going to bounce a signal off the moon to the other side of the Earth. He just shook his head and looked at me. And now I do it on a daily basis. Today I had a quick digital QSO with RX1AS. He's one of the big dogs. If you were able to get on the air and start out with digital EME, he'd probably be one of the first and strongest signals that you would work. There are also some other big ones out there. So I started out with satellite communications because that stuff's kind of needed to get going, but with my rotators and some of my antennas, so I could upgrade when it came to EME. And I took my satellite communication stuff down and put the EME stuff up, and that stuff's just grown. So let's see if I can start out here and share my screen. Hopefully I'm up on the right piece. Let's see. I think that's where I went. If not, nope. Where am I? How do I get out of there?
That's your computer.
Stop share. Okay. Let's see. So okay, there we go. So we're going to start out with satellite communication. Pretty much satellite communication is a two-way satellite let's see, two-way satellite communication. The information is exchanged between any two Earth stations. Your station, my station, is going to go up to the satellite and come back down. There's usually an uplink and a downlink. Sometimes the uplink will be UHF or VHF, and the uplink will be the opposite of the UHF or the VHF. So if it goes up VHF, it comes down UHF. And if it goes up VHF, it comes down UHF. Now, there are some satellites out there that operate their downlink on 23 centimeter or above. I believe that AO92 is one of those. So you really don't need much power to run a satellite communication. 510 watts max. People that use 100-watt linear, it's probably overkill. Depending upon your antenna gain. You don't want to overload the satellite because the satellite will actually go into, it'll change. Well, if you're operating a sideband satellite, a linear satellite, and you hit it with too much power, it's going to start frequency modulating, is what I've read. I've never run a whole lot of power, but I do have a lot of gain in the antennas that I have. So you can operate it with something as simple as an HT. I have one of these Alinco HTs. It does 2 meter, 440, and 1296. It's a pretty rugged HT, this one itself. I remember the first time I got it, within 5 minutes of having it in my hand, I dropped it on the floor at the Hamfest. It bounced, and it's worked.
Besides haircuts, right? There were protests for people to get haircuts in the beginning of this pandemic. What do you say to those governors, Kemp in Georgia, DeSantis in Florida, Abbott in Texas?
Larry, you need to unmute. For some reason, you got muted.
Yeah, I did. I see that. And I heard some other stuff too.
I took care of that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so now I own two of these now. I like the one, so I bought another one. I have made QSOs with this HT. Now, if you're going to make a QSO with a rubber duck antenna, you're probably going to be hard pressed to have a QSO. And you can, but if you're going to use an HT, what you're probably going to need is a better antenna, something like this, a handheld antenna. I have one of these, and I've used it on a cruise ship down in the Caribbean. This is an arrow antenna. The small elements, they're for 440, and the larger elements are for 2 meters. So when you use it, you point it at the where the satellite's coming up. I'll show you some information a little bit about that. And you just point it at the satellite, and you're going to have to rotate it because it's got some sort of polarization. You've got a horizontal antenna here if you hold it horizontally, if you've got a vertical antenna if you hold it vertically. So the satellite's always spinning up there and changing polarity. You may have to adjust, and you'll find out where the signal is greatest by twisting that antenna. So, if let's see, where is my next picture? So this is an antenna system that I own. This one's not mine. You've got a cross boom here, and you've got a 440 antenna on the left, and you've got a 2 meter antenna on the right. In the middle, there is an elevation rotator, and where you can't see is the azimuth rotator. So the elevation will make it go up and down, and the azimuth will make it go right and left. Now, with antennas like these, you've got a reasonable amount of gain. You don't need any more than 5 watts or so. You should be able to get in and out of just about any satellite. Tim was mentioning yesterday, if you look on the crossboom here, I'll try to get larger. These boxes here that I'm circling, hopefully you can see that, they're preamplifiers for each band. One's for 440, and the other would be for 2 meters here. Now, as far as I'm concerned, satellite communication, you really don't need a preamp if you've got good antennas. Now, for EME, you better have a preamp. You'll be much happier. Let's see. So we've got a bunch of coax going to these antennas, and a lot of you folks might have been on HF most of your life, or that's all you've done. Maybe not a lot of VHF, UHF stuff except repeaters and such. So let's see. This rotor that's in the middle. I'm
Larry,
sorry.
somebody asked if you built those antennas or did you buy them commercially?
I bought them commercially. I actually bought them from a ham that lived in a cul-de-sac across the street from the golf course on 250. He had them up with the Azel rotator complete set I bought. And I'm actually going to be selling parts of this coming year. I've got another project going up. But I bought them. They're M-squared antennas. They work great. I can't ask for a better antenna. Most of my antennas are M-squared antennas that I own presently. So what you're going to need for these antennas, this thing in the middle is an elevation rotator. So an elevation rotator that I have, that one is a picture of, is a Yaesu G5500. This is your azimuth rotator over here, and this is your elevation rotator. If you get one of these, the elevation rotator likes to get some water in it at times. So you may be taking it apart within the first 10 years you own it. This setup works great. You can do it manually, but it's a real pain. So you're really going to need some sort of computer control, which I'll get to in just a little bit. Let's see. So going back to the coax and such. Oh, no, not coax. So you're going to need some sort of rig. There are many different rigs that are going to be good for satellite communication and EME. So a TS2000, many of you probably own one of these, and they're a great rig for satellite communication. They're also fair for HF, and I've made quite a few moon bounce contacts, JT65 digital mode contacts with this. Now this is set up on the right-hand side of the big knob in the center. There's a button that says satellite. Now you can hit that and you'll be able to operate satellite mode. But when this is connected to your computer and you have a program, I'll show you in a little bit. All you do is click on the program. It opens up the computer, takes the frequencies, the uplink and the downlink, displays it on the front panel, and it also steers your antenna array. So it's quite a bit of stuff to get going, but it works really good. So this is one of the rigs that I would recommend. Another one here, KA2ENE had one of these. I believe he really liked it. He worked a lot of contests. This is a FT847 Yaesu. Same thing. This is made for satellites. They call it an Earth station. If you ever look at a box that these come in. This is another one that you might want to get if you're going to operate satellite or EME. It'll double for both. Now I have a ICOM 9700 presently. I have not used it for satellite communication yet because the antennas that I have up right now, they're too big and too close to another antenna. So if I don't pay really close attention, they're going to hit each other. I'll be taking care of that this year. But the 9700 here seems to be a great rig. I use it primarily for EME and contesting purposes on 2 meters and 432. I have done 1296 EME with it with limited success. The setup that I have doesn't have the best antenna. I've got a couple of I've got a 4-bay looper setup. Well, I had it up last EME contest. And I worked some big guns there, guys that had bigger dishes than 12 feet. I wasn't able to. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we got a question. What are the key requirements for an EME rig? All three of these have for any other rig. What specifications are you looking for that might be appropriate to use another type rig instead of one of these specifics? Can you give some guidelines, please?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think that having a rig like this, you're going to need some sort of computer control, some cat control. Some of the earlier rigs, let's say a Yaesu 736R or a Kenwood TS 790. These are both good UHF VHF rigs, but they have very limited cat control. And let's say I've used the 790 before, and the 790 has this annoying, whenever it changes the frequency, it goes click, 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 and then it starts going click, 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 as it changes your frequency, as the Doppler shift changes. Sometimes it go click, 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 and as it crescendos up, and it's just annoying in the background. How can you do? It's really hard to have a QSO with that working. Now, the 736R, I own 2 of them, and the cat control is pretty poor on those as well. I've never used one of those for satellite. I'd have to say that you're definitely going to, any radio nowadays has got a pretty good receiver, whether it's a TS2000, a 9700, or a FT847. Now, what I found with the IC 9700 is that on digital modes, I have some frequency drift on 432 and above. I'm able to make QSOs, but guys will tell me, your frequency's drifting. And what I've also found is many transverters. You can get on satellite with transverters. You can get on VHF, UHF moon bounce with transverters, but a lot of times transverters will have quite a bit of drift. I tried digital communication with KA2ENE on 900 megahertz, and I could decode him, but I drifted so bad he could not decode me. So my top of the line Demi transverter at the time, I can't do digital with it. It's got too much drift. So my 9700 here does have drift. It can be remedied. There's a guy named Leo Bodnar, and he has quite a bit of different items for sale for different reasons, but he has one for this that is a, let's see, it is a frequency standard that uses, I think, actually, I don't know a whole lot about it, but it has a frequency standard that I believe is from a satellite. I could be wrong. So it keeps it right rock solid, and I don't have one in mind yet, but I need to get one if I want to continue digital communication on 432 and 1296. So another thing, most people are used to feed lines at HF. And feed lines at HF that you're going to use, oh, hold on a minute, not feed line, but connectors. The connectors that you're going to use are probably a PL259. Most people are familiar with that. And it's probably good up to about 2 meters or so. A lot of 2 meter rigs have this connector on it. And higher in frequency you go, you're going to want to get an N-type connector. So an N-type connector, it seals really well. It's got a piece of rubber in here, so it still can get water in it, but it's a much better connector, and it has a much different. Let's see, what's the word I'm looking for? It has the impedance mismatch between this and SO239 at UHF frequencies. This one does not have as much of a bump, so it does not create SWR. I believe that I'm correct on that.
Yeah, John said it has a constant impedance.
Thank you, John. Over here, what I've got is most of you folks probably use something like an RG8X, for your HF rigs. It's flexible. It's, it doesn't weigh a lot. You can coil a bunch of it up, and it still doesn't weigh a lot. If you look down here, it says performance by frequency band. If you look under F2, the frequency would be 400 megahertz. The attenuation is 8. So 8 dB of attenuation is quite a bit. So a dB is a doubling of power any way you go. So
3 dB. 3
What did
dB
I
is
say?
doubling.
What did I say?
You said 8 dB. 3 dB is doubling.
Sorry. All right. So 3 dB is a doubling of power, no matter whether you go up, down. So if you have an 8 dB loss, that means that you've lost half your power over twice. So if you've got 100 dB, 100 watts going up to your antenna, you've got less than 20 watts going at your antenna now, because you've got an 8 dB loss. Now the same thing goes with reception. If you've got 8 dB loss in your feed line, that signal that is that's S9 will be less than S8, because each S unit is 6 dB, and you'll lose a whole S unit. So somebody that might be copyable above the noise on that frequency will be below the noise now. So what you're going to want is something more of an LMR 400. Let me see. I've got Tim, let me ask a question if I may. Now at the top here, I've got my mute, my stop video, and all that stuff, and it's actually on top of the stuff that I need to click on. How do I get rid of that?
Uh, I'm not sure if you can hide that or not.
Okay, I think
There might be a scroll
I
bar
got
on
it.
the side.
I got it. I got it. All right. So LMR 400 is a great coax for UHF VHF. It's somewhat flexible. It's low loss, like it says, and I've got a lot of it in my shack. If you're going to run a 2-meter antenna, 432 antenna, this is probably the stuff that you're going to want to get. And like I said previous, end connectors, I would be using end connectors as much as I could. So if we look down at the specifications on this, attenuation versus frequency, if you look about that same 450 megahertz, the attenuation for 100 feet is right here is 2.7 dB. So you're probably not going to have 100 feet going out to your tower. You might, but so there's 2.7 dB worth of loss, which as far as I'm concerned is not so bad. If you've got 50 feet going out of your tower, the full run from your rig up to your tower, to your satellite communication or whatever, it's going to have less than a dB and a half for 50 feet. So that's very doable at 450 megahertz. And when you're at 150 megahertz, you're going to be, less than 0.75 range for a 50-foot run. And that's very acceptable. So most of your power will get to the antenna, and most of your received signal will get back to your receiver. Now, here is some heliax that I use. It is not as flexible. It's a 1/2 inch in diameter. It's really good stuff. It will hold, what does it say? 40 kilowatts it'll hold. Not that we're going to use 40 kilowatts, but
Never.
No. Maybe in Europe, but not around here. European kilowatt. So if you look here under the attenuation, when you get up to 400 megahertz, there's only 1.36 dB for a 100-foot run. That's fantastic. This is something that you'd want to use for EME. 2-meter EME, just fine. It's actually what I've got going outside before it hits my 7/8 run. And it is what I'm using all the way up on my run for 432. So if you're doing moon bounce, I'd highly recommend something like this LDF 4-50A. Where are we? For that type of work. Now you're going to need a different connector. Again, you're going to need an L connector, an N connector, I should say. This is one specifically that would go on heliax. You can strip your heliax by hand. There is a tool, but you're definitely going to want an end connector that fits that cable. There are larger heliax with less loss, but that's pretty much what I'm going to talk about today. And that's going to be it with the cabling. So what you're going to exchange is you're going to exchange grid squares with somebody, whether it's EME or satellite. We are in FN 13. There's also smaller grid squares in FN13. I'm actually in FN13 IG, and really it can go smaller than that. But this is a grid square map from ICOM, and I use it when I do contesting and trying to figure out where people are. Really quick, I can look on the map if they're in EM81 or EN91. You know, a 2-meter QSO satellite QSO probably somewhere between here in Florida, here in Nova Scotia, here and South Dakota, something like that. Maybe 1,000 miles or so, give or take, is what you're going to have in your typical FM type satellite QSO. Satellite will come up. You'll probably have somewhere between 5 and 15 minutes to talk through that satellite. Now, this is for an FM bird. There is also a linear satellites that use set single sideband and CW, which the FO29 is actually my favorite. I'll get on more to that later. Let's get rid of this. VRF. All right, so N2YO is a great website to find out where your satellite's going to be that you want to work. You can get information on the satellite, uplink, downlink frequencies, what mode. This one has FM mode, and you're going to need to use a tone, like you've got a repeater tone of around here would be 110.9. This one uses a 67 hertz tone to open it up. So this is the Fox 1D, the AO92. This is an FM bird that I've worked before that still works now. I've actually had a QSO from top of the Carnival cruise ship to Puerto Rico with the AO92 and my my handheld Alinco and that Arrow antenna. A couple of years ago, I went on vacation. I wanted to get some stuff in the log, and I did. I was very happy. So N2IO, it's a great site. It's not one that I use. What I use is I use the AMSAT site. Let's see, the AMSAT site will let you track just about anything. This is a new satellite that's up. It went up within, I think, the past year. And we can find out where the PO101 is. It looks like it's right up around Africa there, the PO101. And it last traversed over the middle of the Atlantic. That would be, if that pass was a little bit closer to the US, like right about there, if you can see my pointer, that would be a great pass to try to get into Europe with. Now, let me go back. So what you've got is on this website, you put in your FN13 IG grid square, which is where I'm at, and it'll calculate your latitude and longitude for you. So right here, it allows you to look for any other satellite that's up there. By the way, there's approximately 3,000 satellites that are up there right now. And yeah, so I've worked the AO7. I've worked the AO73. I worked the 91, the 92. I think the 95 was dead when it went in the air. Let's see, where else have I? Now, the FO29 is one of my favorite satellites. It's a linear bird. I was able to have a QSO with a guy in Spain. I heard him one time and I'm like, no, Spain, really? I heard his grid square, I heard his call, and I seen where the satellite was. So the next time the satellite went over the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, I listened for him. Sure enough, there he was. So I had a quick QSO with him, probably just a couple minutes that we had, that we both were in sight of the bird, I guess you could say. And it worked out really good. I got him in the log, and I'll show you folks that in a bit. Let's see. The XW2A, B, C, D, E, and F. I've used the A, B, C, and D. I don't think that the E is operational, but anything. The SO50 is an old satellite, but if you want to predict where the passes are and when it's at, the SO50, you can come over here, and 10th of April, it's going to come up and have a maximum elevation of 45 degrees. Now you see below that maximum elevation of 3 degrees, that's not a pass that you really want to try to work, or the one with 2 degrees below it. You want something that's going to be over the trees and above the horizon. You'll also notice that in the duration of that, the ones that have the highest elevation, they'll be the ones that'll be open to you to talk to more and further, longer duration of time. So let's say if you've got a handheld antenna and you're operating with an HT, figure your maximum elevation is going to be 45 degrees, straight up's 90. So 45 degrees to that will be where they're going to be for your elevation. And your AOS azimuth there is your acquisition of signal. So 320 degrees. So that's going to be somewhat pointing up towards Canada, I would have to say. And your maximum elevation of azimuth would be 236. And your loss of signal azimuth would be 164. So it's going to start up north like a Canada, and it's going to be towards your left, towards the west a bit, and then go down just southeast of you. So let's see current position of SO50. You see where it says QTH, my QTH, see how it goes. It's going to come down right here, this path right here. It's going to come down up where Canada would be, come down 45-degree angle, and you're going to lose the signal just about to the southeast of my QTH.
Larry, it shows two paths there. Which one is the current one presently where it's located?
The current one is, if you look all the way over to the right, where it says SO50 right in here, is currently where it's at. And where it comes up here, you'll notice that over here, it's going to come up. That's its path right there. And it's the next on line to come down. So the SO50 will be coming here. Let me just go back. Very soon, actually, coming over at 14:56. What time we got now? About 20 minutes, it'll be coming overhead. So let me just take a quick drink here. So AMSAT's a great website for me to use. I really like it. The other thing is I've got a program. You're going to need a program if you're going to operate your computers. And I've got a couple of those in just a bit. Let's see, what do I have next? Fading and Doppler. Let me get this into full screen. So Doppler effect, I guess, is what I can tell you is when you hear a vehicle coming towards you, slaying on a horn, here, it goes past you, changes frequency. The same thing happens when a satellite or the moon is coming towards you and going away. There's a Doppler shift frequency. Now, this right here says the relative motion between the transmitter and receiver causes Doppler shifts. Unfortunately, I can't see the rest of this on the right-hand side. Typically comes from many angles around the mobile. Scenario causes a range of Doppler shift, known as a Doppler spectrum. The maximum Doppler shift corresponds to the local scattering components whose direction exactly opposes the mobile trajectory. So when you're moving, the stuff that's coming towards you is going to be higher in frequency because the wavelengths are getting shorter. And as it's going away, the wavelengths are getting longer because there's a longer distance between, so they will be less in frequency. So let me just go on to the next one, I think, here. Maybe not. 712, nope. Doppler effect. This is actually where I wanted to start. All right, Doppler effect or Doppler shift is a change in frequency of a wave to an observer moving relative to its source. Commonly heard when a vehicle is sounding a siren or horn approaches. And when the source of the waves moving towards the observer, each successive wave crest is emitted from a position closer than a previous wave. Therefore, each wave takes slightly more time to reach the observer than the previous wave, hence the time between the arrival of a successive wave crests at the observer is reduced, causing an increase in the frequency. So that is kind of what I just said, and I went over that. So let me get back out of full screen. Any questions on Doppler effect?
Anybody got a question? Unmute yourself and shout out. Any questions to this point? I've had a few comments in the chat. A few people came in late. I suggest you select your chat and look at it. And there's some comments in there.
Larry, one question about what is the frequency shift in hertz, kilohertz? You know, how far do you have to actually tune your radio? And if you're using a handheld, do you have to pre-program in a number of different frequency pairs in order to compensate? Thank you.
Okay. Where I was going next. Now, this is an AMSAT website about AO92 being commissioned and open for amateur use. Now, your receive frequency is going to stay the same. The AO92 is a 145.88 up and a 435, call it 350 down. Now, at your acquisition of signal, you're going to be transmitting at 435, 340. And by the time you lose a signal, you're going to need to change your transmit frequency. Up 20 kc, right?
Yeah.
So it definitely changes. Now you can have preset channels. You'll have preset channels. I don't use preset channels. I just turn the knob on top because I'm not really computer literate. I'm I'm more of a hands-on guy, I guess you could say. But with a linear bird, some of them are 50 kc either way, and you can have multiple QSOs on a linear bird because there's so much bandwidth, and the sideband or CW signal has such less bandwidth than the FM signal. So the FM signal, I think, is 5 or 10 wide, and it's going to change over the period of the QSO. So I would say that this is a 20 kc is what you got to work with an FM bird. I'd say that would be typical. And you've got 50 to 100 kc depending upon the satellite if it's a linear bird and you're operating sideband or CW. Hopefully that...
He's going to have to change it manually.
Well, I'll tell you what, you're going to change where you want to receive and transmit manually, but everything else will be tracked automatically if you use programming and a rig, which is coming up next. So this radio programming chart says AO92 in mode UV. So UV is UHF, VHF. Now, if you look at the AO292 Doppler shift correction mode, when it's in L band VHF, which is 1296, your transmit frequency is 1267, 320 at acquisition of signal, and it changes quite a bit more. And the loss of signals, you're going to have 380. You've got 60 kc worth of changing signal, where your receive frequency will stay the same. So hopefully that answers that question.
Does your software that you're running that's tracking this with your cat control, does it change periodically, or does it wait for signal fading and then shifts to the next frequency? How does it determine when to shift?
Okay. You put in a predetermined time in the software. It could be every second, half second, every 5 seconds, it can update. And the same thing, it will do the same thing with your rotor. Every 5 seconds, every second, every 10 seconds, however you have it set in the program itself. So you're going to need some sort of program to do this with. Now, a program's not going to work with an HT. So that's why you've got pre-programmed stuff in your HT, or you just use the VFO knob like I do. So one of them people are probably familiar with is Ham Radio Deluxe. I don't have anything interactive here for it, but I've used Ham Radio Deluxe. It's worked for me with satellite communications with the TS2000 that I had owned. And I never got the rotor control to work properly. I did everything by hand. And I think that there's a better program out there. And the program that I use is called SAT PC32. It's a great program. You can write your satellites in it if needed. Like, let's say there's a new satellite that comes in. You just write it in the program. It has rotor control. See where this has the R plus, has a rotor control. It has let's see, where am I going with this? So it has a full Doppler shift. If you see here, your downlink is 435.848. and your uplink is 145.952. Now these will change as a satellite is coming up and over where you're at. It tracks the satellite. It knows where it's at. It tells your, I'll call it the Yaesu G550 rotor assembly, where to point, what the elevation is, and it tracks. So you don't have to do anything of that. You don't have to worry about where the antenna is pointing. It does it all for you. And it changes the frequency on your VFO, your split VFO on whatever rig that you're using automatically. It's got that in the program. So really all you've got to do with an FM bird is talk. Similar QSO would be something like K4YEL, KD2LGX, FN13, and he'd be KK4YEL, let's see, KD2LGX, KK4YEL, FM21. And I'd say QSL, and the FM birds are really busy. People right on top of each other. It's tough to get in there with HT.
One comment from Dave Carlson said that he's heard that AMSAT asked that 91 and 92 birds not be used because of battery issues. Have you heard anything recently about that?
The 91 I don't think is operable anymore. And the 92, it says don't use it in eclipse. So because of the batteries, you better have it, don't use it at night. So use it during the day. And unfortunately, those were great birds. They worked well. There are, I think that there's maybe 3 or 4 FM satellites up presently for amateur use that are UV type satellites, FM birds. And
Good.
I
Thank
haven't.
you.
Yep.
Thanks, Dave, for that comment. I hope that answers his comment. So 92 during the daytime.
All right. So let's see. Where am I next? So what I wanted to do is show you guys some of the QSOs that I've had, guys and girls. Show you guys some of the QSOs that I've had with satellite stuff. So let's see. Right here, see where this Spain right here? That was on the FO29 in IN32 grid square. He was in Spain. So I really liked the FO29. It's a sideband linear bird. And below it, I have here the XW2D, XW2C, and the XW2B. Those are all linear satellites as well. If I scroll down, the SO50, if I'm not mistaken, is an old FM bird. It's old and tough. It's been up there. It's actually in a higher Earth orbit than most of the other satellites that we use, which would be low Earth orbit or LEO satellites. The SO50 is an FM bird, and I believe that it's just the opposite. It's UHF up and VHF down. It's a little bit harder to hit, but if you've got good antennas and steering properly, you shouldn't have an issue. Coming down here, I worked Ecuador and Curacao on the FO29. They were, I love DXing. I'm like a DX hound. I just, I have a lot of fun doing this stuff. Now, if I do scroll down a little bit more, where am I? Antigua and Barbuda. And I did want to say up here, there are other satellites as the AO7. That's an older, higher Earth orbit satellite that the signals are kind of warbly because of the batteries. I believe that it went out of commission and woke up again. The CAS-4B is a newer satellite. I've worked, well, obviously I've worked CAS-4B, and there's a CAS-4A as well. And here's our XW2A satellite. So for that, I'm going to conclude this portion of the satellite communication. Any questions before I go on to EME?
Anybody unmute
Or
yourself?
comments?
Just a comment. Ham Radio Deluxe has recently rewritten their SAT control program. I haven't tried to use it, but apparently they spent a lot of time and effort trying to update it.
I'm glad to hear that because it was tough for me to do. And I'm not a computer guy, and I'm not good with making computer stuff talk to my rig. I've got IT guy for that. I'm just not really. So, all right. So onto our
I have
next.
one. I have
What?
one quick question for you.
Shoot.
You said that you work from a cruise ship.
Yeah.
And you said Carnival Cruise Lines. How hard was it to get approval to be able to operate from the ship?
All right. So what I did first is I called Carnival Cruise Line before I even went on the ship, and no problems. Don't even have to ask the captain. So I had my aero antenna like in a gym bag with all my stuff and some paperwork as well, because you got to write stuff down. And I'd go up on the top deck and put this stuff together, and people are looking at me funny, like, who's this guy? What's he doing? Is he like secret agent? Is the ship gonna blow up? I don't know. So I mean, a couple people, and I answered their questions. They're like, okay, cool. And this was a cruise where my fiance here, she blew out her knee second night there. So most of the time she was in a room with ice on her knee, and I was up on a top deck trying to make QSOs. It worked out for me okay, but it was unfortunate for her. I actually had to push her around the cruise ship and the islands for the next 5 days in a wheelchair.
So was she mobile EME then?
It was not easy. It was like, yeah, mule. I was pushing. So, yep.
I have a question.
Fun
right.
times.
Anybody else? Dennis, you got your mic unmuted. Go ahead.
Yep, I have a question. Larry, is there any chance of getting into this without an extensive investment in antennas? Like, could you start out with like egg beater omnidirectionals or some lesser investment in antennas than you have?
I would say yes, and I did that. Now the egg beater antenna, I actually made my egg beater antennas. There was some guy down in Five Land that had some plans for it, and I think it uses RG62 cable as a phasing cable inside, because the way that you make those antennas, there's two of them and they need to be phased together. Each part of the egg beater itself, you'll have two different ones, one for 440 and one for 5. So if you're going to use that type of antenna, you're going to need a preamplifier for one. You're going to use a preamplifier. And, if you can make them yourself, you're saving a whole lot of money. You don't need the directional controls. You're not going to have as much gain, but you know what? You're going to be on the air. Some antenna is better than no antenna. And you know what? You're not going to know until you try. So that's part of the fun of ham radio for me. I like building stuff, repairing stuff. I don't like letting the smoke out of stuff, but boy, I seem to. So.
One question on, can you use independent radios? I suspect if you have transverters, they're independent of each other, and somehow you have to hook them into the satellite control or something like that, or the antenna control and the frequency control. So can you use older radios? Like I have an ICOM 275 and 475 for 2 meters and 440. Can you still use those with the current software for radio control and so forth?
Okay. Truthfully, I couldn't tell you. I don't see why you couldn't with the right software person. They can split their COM ports, and they can do all kinds of stuff. I mean, even if you had to run, you had to run two different computers, one to what am I doing? One to control the UHF and one to control the VHF. You could probably do that as well. I mean, that's one way to skin a cat. And Harry Hoffman raised his hand. Tim?
Yeah, go ahead, Harry. You can unmute.
As far as the two separate radios, when I very first started playing around with the satellites, I'm nowhere near as active as I should be on them, but I had independent radios for every band, no computer control of any kind, and it can be done. It's cumbersome. I was using an FT790. That's a portable. That's a 5-watt portable Yaesu all mode 70 centimeter rig. Funny, when you buy it, it comes with the 25-watt amplifier. The battery pack is optional, but I use that with the 25-watt amp as my base station side for 70 centimeters, and my 2-meter side was an ICOM 251A. So it can be done. There was no computer control of any kind, it can be done. As far as separate radios under computer control, there are a number of programs, including the current version of Ham Radio Deluxe, that will let you use multiple radios under computer control, one for transmit and one for receive. So yes, it can be done.
Very good.
Thank you, Harry. Fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Jamie, wait one. Jamie Oliver, you want to unmute and ask your comment or question?
Yeah, can you hear me at all?
Yes, you're fine, Jamie.
Oh, good. I didn't think it worked. Yeah, I got distracted. Yeah, so which are the satellites you recommend for both sideband and FM?
Well, as long as, all right, now I haven't done satellite probably in over a year. All right, so things have changed in that period of time. I'm just going to go back here to my AMSAT right here, and show predictions for. I got to move this up out of the way.
Now, is this the selections you just showed there? Are those all operational, or are some of them dead?
Some of these are dead. Now, what I will say is I'm trying to move this out of my way here, but that's not going to work. So the ISS has a transponder on it presently. So you could work through the ISS. You could work this AO73 right here. The AO92, I believe, if it's not in eclipse. Let's see, we're going to go down the FO29.
Are they linear or are they FM? Specify which is which.
The first two or three are FM. The FO29 is a linear bird. Excuse me. Let's see, where are they? The SO50 is an FM bird. The XW2A, B, C, D, and E are sideband birds. This is my CAS one. Still be coming up. CAS4A and CAS4B, those are sideband birds. Those are operational as well, and they only went up a couple years ago, so hopefully the batteries are still good in those. Let's see, some of these other ones.
Is there an up-to-date list? I mean, I see these and I
would say search the web.
And there's just like an enormous number of them. And it's like, I don't know where to start. And I just give up, I walk away.
I would have to say that I would need to do some research and search the web.
Okay.
If you wanted to do something like that, I bet you that you find out exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah. Okay. I just wondered if there was a site you were aware of. Say, okay, these are the ones that are operational or something. MTET might have.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I looked them up the other day, and I couldn't really get a good answer from what I was looking at. So without going up and actually saying, all right, let's try to get on this one, on this pass that's got good elevation.
Yeah.
It works or it doesn't work. Maybe that satellite's dead, and it might take tries to do that.
Yeah, Keith commented that the AMSAT's org site /status will give you what's most active. Also, Dave Carlson, one of our computer geeks, said that if you're using two radios, SAT-PC32 supports two radio operations.
No kidding. I love that program.
Oh,
I do.
See?
All right. Any other questions or comments before I continue with EME?
One person wanted to know what is a linear bird. I believe you said that was single sideband or CW. It's
a linear bird would be something that's going to transpond single sideband or CW Morse code, as opposed to FM. Let's say you're talking. Let's just talk amplifiers for a second. An FM bird is not linear. You don't need. Well, an FM amplifier is run in Class C, which is not a linear operation. Class A or AB1 is a linear operation, and that's what you would use for a sideband. But CW is also used on those birds, the linear birds. Actually, field day a couple years ago when I was with you, Tim, I ran a satellite station there, and with W2XRX, and I actually had a CW QSO with K2DH with W2 what is it with the RDXA group. So we were pretty close, but we actually, it was right through the satellite. It was. So I thought it was pretty cool.
That's almost over the tree line.
just about. So
I have one more quick question. Do you know of any of the satellites that are storm forward?
amateur satellites, there's some I believe that are just getting launched within the next month or so. Again, I'd say I'd have to search the net for that information.
Okay. Harry Ramos, you're next.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted somebody asked a question. If you go to the AMSAT website, there's a status page that is a nice table that shows you all the satellites and when they're the reports, recent reports that they've had. And if you click on the name of the satellite, it'll take you to a summary page of what that satellite is, whether it's a linear or not, or and what frequencies it's using. So AMSAT, Larry just showed you one page. There's lots of links on the AMSAT page or page tabs to find out all the information you want. Okay.
And there is.
All right, Harry number 2, Harry Hoffman.
Okay, yeah, and going back to satellite antennas. Now, something I've never had is elevation rotors, but that does not preclude you from making satellite contacts using just your 2 meter and 70 centimeter antennas that are on your standard azimuth rotor. And Larry said, "Oh, those passes that are only at 3 degrees, ignore those." No, those passes are great for somebody that doesn't have an elevation rotor. It's right above the horizon, right where your antenna is pointing.
As long as you don't have trees or something, a hill a bit next to you.
So don't rule them out. They can be useful. And I find that I can, even without, this is when I had my antennas up, they'll be back up eventually. But even though they were fixed standard antennas, horizontal, I could still copy the satellite up to say 10 or 15 or even 20 degrees. When it climbed really high, then it became more difficult. But guess what? Most hams, we got more than one antenna. So I also have verticals on those bands. So I switch my antenna switch to the vertical and might pick it up again. But again, what I would call a grazing pass. It never climbs very high. It stays relatively low, just a few degrees above the horizon. It may only be there for 5 or 6 minutes, but that's a great pass for somebody that can't elevate their antennas. And it does work.
I have to agree with Harry. I like that. I like that idea. And, a lot of your antennas, when the antennas have less gain, they have a higher, I don't know if the right word I'm using is aperture. So, there's going to be a beam width that's on the H plane, which is your horizontal, and a beam width on the vertical plane, which is your vertical. And a lot of them are 20 or more degrees. So if you have some antenna that's vertically or horizontally polarized, that doesn't have any elevation, it's got probably 20 degrees or so, maybe more, that you could use it for a satellite pass. Or the same thing with EME. If you've got a horizontally polarized antenna or vertically polarized antenna, and excuse me, you have 20 degrees worth of call it aperture. You know what? You could work the moon with within the first 20 degrees. I find the first 20 degrees is where most of my good European contacts are made. So.
Good. Any further questions or comments on satellites before we move on to shooting at the moon? Okay, continue, Larry.
All right, let's see. So, Earth-Moon-Earth communication, what is it? It's two-way radio communication on VHF and above using the moon as a passive reflector. So anything 50 megahertz and up, one of the problems with 50 megahertz may be the size of the antennas. There's not a lot of guys doing stuff on 50 megahertz lately. W7GJ is one of them. And there was another guy, KB7Q. They're actually going out with a de-expedition next fall. I forget the islands, but I was just reading about it earlier today. So this is referred to as moonbounds. And I just had a QSO with RX1 AS today. He is in or around Moscow. Man, he had a great signal. I could actually hear him. So back in the 60s to the 90s, you had to have high power, big antennas. All that you used was CW and sideband if you were lucky. I mean, if you're operating sideband moon bounce, you're talking large dish antennas and lots of power, really good preamplifiers. So it was technically challenging, required substantial investment. Definitely not a plug and play. So here's an antenna from W5UN called a Mighty Big Array. I mean, that's pretty technical. I mean, all the SWR, the SWR has got to get checked. The feed lines, the azimuth, elevation, phasing cables, power splitters. Oh Lord, there's a lot of stuff going on there. So, you don't have to have this to do moon bounce. So what we've got is between the moon and back, there's a path loss of 250 dB or so. I believe on 2 meters, it's 221. I could be wrong. So that's a lot of path loss. Remember, every 3 dB is a doubling of power. And if you take away 3 dB, it's a halving of power each time. So the other thing that you've got when you do EME, we talked about Doppler shift. Now you've got an issue with path loss. Spatial polarization offset. This is some of the stuff that was in the extra course, where your horizontal isn't my horizontal. When your horizontal antenna starts out here, by the time it goes through the Van Allen radiation belts up through the E and F layers of the atmosphere, bounces off the moon and comes back, it's not horizontal anymore. It could be, but it could be anywhere vertical or anywhere in between there, and it's measured in degrees. So then you also have Faraday rotation, which is another thing that was in the extra class, which is random polarization shift. Galactic and solar noise, there's a lot of noise. I mean, if you just point your antenna at the sun is noisy. You point it at the moon or even your neighbor's house, it's noisy. There's all kinds of noise out there. And usually the contacts are made with CW. So your equipment limitations were noise figure, which is how good your receiver will hear, and that includes preamps and the type of coax. You better use the best and the biggest antennas available. And then what happened? We got JT65. That's what happened. JT65 software for EME. So now you can decode minus 27 dB below the noise floor. So that enabled people like me to be able to do moon bounce and not have a sizable dish and a European kilowatt to say. So, and by contrast, CW is only copyable to about minus 12 dB with good ears. I did have a CW contact last year on 432 with DL9KR. His name's Jan. I tried for 6 months. I wanted to get a CWQ under my belt. And I did. So I was pretty proud of that. I went to the extent of even folding my tower over and changing the polarization of my beams to try and get a different angle on them, so to speak. That didn't work either. So I'm not sure if I go to the next one here. Okay, let's see. So let me go to next one up here. So is that where I'm at? Okay, so you've got to know where the moon is to be able to point your antennas at the moon. One of the sites that I use is right here. This is real time. The moon altitude right now is 41 degrees, and the moon direction is 155 south-southeast. So from me, that's where it's at. And this is how, when I'm sitting in my easy chair at night, I say, when's the moon going to come up? When should I be downstairs to get on my radio? So that's this is what I use: Rochester, New York, moon size, moon set, and moon phases. Now, the other one that I use here is make more miles on VHF. This tells me when the best time of month to do EME is. Now, the second, third of the month, if you look over here, see this big red spike? It's probably not your best time to try any type of communication, Earth, Moon, Earth. And right now we're at this black line. It's not too bad. You see it actually over here on the 5th. The loss over here, if let's see, where the heck am I? So the red line is degradation in decibels. So degradation would be um, what type of loss that you would have with your path loss. The yellow line is the moon distance. Now the moon distance changes between 365,000 kilometers and 406,000 kilometers. So that's quite a bit that the moon changes, and your path loss changes because of the distance. Now, the other thing, the blue line that's here is the moon declination. Now, the Earth and Moon, the Earth changes its axis. I believe that the Moon stays stationary in its orbit around the Earth, but the Sun, the Earth changes its axis, and that's where you get the declination. Sometimes the Moon will rise, let's say, 120 degrees to the east. Sometimes it'll rise at 77 degrees to the east. That depends upon the axis of the Earth. Now, the higher it rises, the higher latitude it rises, the more time it will be in the sky, and the more time you're going to have to make a QSO to some of the more distant places. I can, during periods of high declination, I believe is what I'm using for the right words, high declination, I can operate a Russian on my moonrise, and I can operate a Russian on my moonsat. But down below there, they're not going to see the moon when the Earth is tilted in a different direction. So come the 18th of this month, you'll have the most time of moon. And unfortunately, the degradation, the path loss will be slightly higher then. But you know what? You've got between the 5th and the 27th to operate as far as I'm concerned. I'd operate on the 28th as well. The 29th is getting sketchy, and then it's up from there. Then we're into the next moon phase. So this is a great website. I like it. If I go over to my VHF database, I think it is. Hold on. And I look for my news. View latest. What I can find is KA6U has just done a Little D expedition. He's in Florida now, and he travels all over. He went to FMO3, FMO2, and EM93 just to do some operation, kind of portable moon bounce. It can be done. KA6U, he's pretty avid in this stuff now. Let's see, and if I click on him, it probably give us some information. So he just went April 10th it was. So he's maybe still operational in FMO3, 8 hours at each site. So I don't think he's got any pictures here, but so he's going to be on 6 meter and 2 meters on April 12th. And he used to be in California. Now going back to TX7B, W7GJ here, let's see. W7GJ, he's a very avid big gun 6 meter operator. He has he's going to go with KB7Q. And where is this D expedition? FOTX7MB. Where the heck is it? The Austral Islands. Right here it says the Austral Islands. So wherever the grid square, the heck is it? Grid square. Anyways, if you want to look it up, it would be Big Sky Spaces W7GJ, Astral and Marquesas Islands. I'm not quite sure where they're at, but so let's see, where was I? So this is a grid square, and this is what you're going to exchange, whether you're doing satellite or EME communication. So here This is FN. This is where we're at. And again, it's broken down into FN13, FN30. And if you go over here to KN or JN over Europe and Eastern Europe, they're also going to be broken down into KN13 and even further into like KN13JO. And these are some of the things that your digital WSJT is going to exchange as part of the QSO. So the world is broken up into a bunch of different grids, and I haven't even worked half of them yet. A lot of them you see are in the ocean, and they won't be. You won't work them. Sometimes people have a DXpedition for moon bounce, or HF, and they'll go to islands that are not even inhabited, and they'll go and stay there for a week and make some QSOs. So we've got one of the ways that I stay in contact with people is chat room. WSJT EME is one of the chat rooms that I use. If we go down here, I'm not sure if I'm still on here, maybe not. I tried working 9 Yankee 4 David. He is on here, but he's only got 120 watts. He's if you look right here, I'm trying to circle it right here where my pointer is. He's got the same antenna that I have, 4x9, and he's only running 120 watts. And you know what? With my 4x9 antenna, I decoded him today at minus 28 dB below the noise floor. He didn't see me. He didn't hear me. I don't know why. I got a kilowatt. But so there are lots of guys on here, and what they will do is they'll say, this is where I am going to call at, or thank you for the QSO. This is your report, or anything that has to do with WSJT and communications between who's ever in the chat room. So some people that are on here, like if you look down from the top here, there's N5TM, AB4, GS, IK4WLV, and below there is K2TXB. K2TXB, his name's Russ Pillsbury. He's a pretty smart guy. He's a moon bounce guy, sure. He has worked with W2HRO, which is another big name, and they're pretty knowledgeable about this stuff. So you see these guys that are on right now. This is live. So N5TM, would imagine he's down Louisiana way. AB4GS, somewhere in Foreland, maybe Tennessee. IK4WLV Max, he is in just going down here. He is in he's in Italy. G1KAW, there's a bunch of Europeans on right now. So this is one of the chat rooms I use to set up calls, tell people where I'm calling, and to see where other people are calling. See, it just updated itself. So let's see. Over here is another one called Live CQ. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a lot of spots on here right now, but it tells you where people are calling at. The spotter is in this spotter right now. He's in Italy, IK4WLV, and he spots AB4GS at 144, 117 on 2 meters, the time. So he's operating the odd sequence, and his signal is minus 25 to IK4WLV. He won't necessarily be minus 25 to you or anybody else. And let's see if I hit all spots here, latest spots. So these are some of the latest spots. When it's contest time, it'll be 3 times as long as this. So, this tells you the times, the dates, what sequence they're operating. Now, if you look over here, where am I? Over here to polarization. You see this IK4WLV, he's got something that's called map 65. Map 65. Can you believe I haven't had any coffee today? Map 65 will tell you what signal, what polarity the signal's coming in at. So remember, it's going up horizontal and it's coming down vertical or somewhere in between. So this polarization is coming into him from AB4GS at 109 degrees polarization, from VA3 DIF at 3 degrees, 71 degrees for the next, 48, 11, 50, all over the board. So when it goes through space and off the moon and back in through the radiation belts, through the F and E layers, things change. So sometimes you might be able to hear that guy really good. You might be able to get a trace, his WJST trace really good, but he might not see you because it doesn't always work both ways, and that's called one way. It's a one-way communication, and you won't be able to make a QSO until that changes. So let's see, where am I next? So this is another chat room that I use. This is for the one I really like for 432. Now these guys here, you could pick 1296, and there's many more bands that you could have on here, but this is the HB9Q logger. HB9Q is a superstation in Switzerland. I've got a picture of the station. I'll show you in a bit. I've worked them on 2 meters, 432, and I worked them on 1296 because they're a big gun. So they will post of where they're transmitting at, 432.080 second, JT65B, and he's listening on his own echo. So obviously he can hear his echo. The reason that he's stating JT65B is, well, we've got other modes that we can use. We've got a new mode, Q65A30, and there's a whole bunch of more sub modes to that just came out. I've used it. It seems to work better than JT65 for me for what I've tried. Now, this guy that's calling CQ on 432, I can go over to his call sign, and it says see station info. I click. Right click? No. Click. Maybe I can't. Maybe I can't. Sharing my screen and stuff, but it'll show me his station information. So this is a great chat room that I use when I want to have a 432 QSO. Let's see. So this is what WSJTX looks like. I don't have anything that I can have in real time, but this is what I use to make my EME QSOs. Also, you folks may know it for doing FT8, MSK 144, meteor scatter, different digital modes. It's similar to FL Digi, but this is made for weak signal Earth-Moon Earth communication. There are some others out there, MSHV, but this is the one that seems to work best for me that I'm familiar with. Now, where are we? So, this is an EME array with elevation, pointing up at the sky. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 elements. So it's a 4-base 7 element. You know what? That's going to have a great pattern. It's going to be pretty quiet. The more antennas you have, the quieter the pattern is, the better you can hear because there's less noise. So, if you get rid of all the noise that's out there, you'll be able to hear some really good deep down signals. So, I've got something similar to this in my backyard, and for what it's worth, I'm selling it this year. So anybody that's interested, get a hold of me at QRZ. I got a nice setup I'm selling. I bought it from K2OS. It worked well for him, and it worked great for me. So the next one here is, remember I told you guys about HB9Q. So HB9Q is a superstation. They run all the way up to 10 gig. This dish right here, I think is 30 feet or larger. They can work stations on some of the higher bands down to 10 watts in a small antenna, digital. So like I said, I've worked these guys on 3 bands. They're in Switzerland. I believe the guy's name that operates or owns it, his name's Dan. HB9CVQ, I think it is. So HB9Q is it's a great station for somebody that wants to try EME on a minimal budget, possibly with no elevation and 100 watts. You get in one of these chat rooms and you see HB9Q on, you say, hey, can we try? And you know what? Don't be surprised if you can make a QSO. So, and the other thing is, one of our local guys, W2BYP, John. He was on earlier. I'm not sure if he still is. I hope he is. This is his 30-foot dish in Macedon. So I'd have to say he's one of the big guns in our area, maybe the big gun.
You
And
want John to comment? He is here.
if he'd like to be my guest, yes, sir.
John, speak up.
Yeah, it's not 30 feet. It's a 28-foot Kennedy dish, but it works pretty well on various bands. I've used it on 432, 1296, 2304, and 3400. I've used it on receive on 5760, but it starts to deteriorate at the higher frequencies. But it works well.
Did you have a tough time getting permits to put that up in your location, or that's not a homeowners association, obviously?
It's not a homeowners association. I live on a hill surrounded by a cemetery, so the neighbors don't complain.
Very good. Everybody liked that. Thank you very much, John.
Yep.
Nice installation.
So John and I are pretty close, and it's hard to have communication between our two stations because there is a ground wave and there's one that would have a 2.5-second delay between the Earth and the Moon and back. There's a 2.5-second delay, and that's how on WSJT you can tell if it's a terrestrial signal or a moon signal. So he's seen me before, and I've seen him, but one of these days I'm going to try to have a queue on 1296 with you, John. Hopefully that'll work. So moving here, you're going to need some equipment if you want to get serious with this. You're going to need a preamplifier of sorts. This is a mast mount preamplifier. It's made by Beco. It's not cheap. It's got built-in relays, so people that don't want to build things, that would rather buy something easy and put it up, this might be for you. It's a quality preamp, and I use one on 432. It's rated for about 2,000 watts. If you're going to use anything above 1,000, well, if you're going to use a preamplifier, it needs to be as close to the antenna as possible. And if you're going to have 1,000 watts before that preamplifier, you need something to be able to insulate it from the RF so you don't burn up the little MOSFET or the little whatever piece of semiconductor you've got in there that's going to amplify your signal. So this has built-in relays, reasonably high power. I believe last time I looked, they were Russian relays. I've still got one of these here that I blew up that I haven't put back together yet. Now, to run something like this, you're going to need a sequencer. What a sequencer does is a sequencer makes certain things happen at a certain period of time during your transmit and receive cycle. If not, you're going to blow up a preamp, you're going to blow up something, you're going to hot switch a relay. Things are going to go bad. So when WSJT keys your rig or you key your rig, the first thing that's going to happen is your preamplifier should come out of line when you transmit. First thing, preamplifier comes out of line, or your maybe, let me think about this. First thing that you're going to want to do is get your preamp out of line. Then the antenna switch is going to switch. And John, correct me if I'm wrong. The antenna switch is going to switch. Then your preamplifier, I forget how it goes actually. Could you help me out, John? W2BYP?
Yeah, this is a case where you have to protect your preamp from seeing any of the power from the transmitter. So the first thing you want to do when you go into a transmit cycle is you want to terminate the preamp, typically into a 50 ohm resistor, so that it's essentially safe. And then you move through other devices. The last thing you want to do is engage the radio into transmit. So you could, for example, first terminate the preamp and then allow the key lines on the other devices to be able to be engaged. And then the last thing you do is engage the PTT on the radio. It's all done in tens and 20s of milliseconds, so it goes pretty fast, but it's important that you do sequence. In this particular game, especially if you're running high power, it's important to protect the very, very high sensitivity preamps.
Thank you for helping me, John. I was tongue-tied and lost right there for a minute. So let's see, where is my next one? So this is an EME station, typical EME station. Now they're using an FT847 that we seen earlier. Harry KA2NE, he's pretty familiar with this. He had one. And you're going to use some antennas here. I thought that I could click on those. And we've seen a sequencer, and also you're going to need some sort of power if you're not going to run 100 watts. This one here looks like it's a kilowatt for 144 megahertz. So 2 meters, got some fans up on top. This is not a tube type rig. It looks like, well, it says right on the front, solid state power amplifier. So there is a diagram here of what's going on. And Tim, could I take a break for just a minute, please?
Sure.
Would you mind? Okay,
No,
I'll be right
no.
back, folks. Sorry, I got to be right back.
All right, you're on.
We back on track. All right, so like John and I were speaking about, you've got a sequencer, and the sequencer would be here, and it has certain things it has to do. One, it has to switch a preamp in and out. Two, it has to switch your TR relays in and out, and it has to give a PTT line your sense to make your amplifier turn on. So your PTT is when your microphone, you would actually key your microphone or your foot switch, or the WSJT digital program does it for you. That goes in and turns a sequencer on. Actually, sequencers can be pretty simple. Let's see. This is one that I have here. Let's see. I don't know if you can see that. It's made by SSB Electronics. You'd put this in a box. You'd put a bunch of wires on it and homebrew it yourself. This is like 30 something bucks. So there's other people in town that they build them, but me, I'm not that guy. I just go out and buy it. But so the sequencer is going to turn your amplifier on. It's going to turn your preamplifier on. It's going to take your coax relay. Now this is your output relay, and this is the input relay. And what's happening here is inside that SSB, that BCO preamp that I showed you, a couple of these relays are already in there. So they're protection relays, and they make it so that your preamp won't burn out from excess RF. And for here, it's also switching your amplifier in and out. And what we haven't talked about is a power splitter over to the left-hand side. You need something to distribute the power properly between however many antennas that you're using. If you're using more than one antenna, it could be a 2-way, a 4-way. I've got one here. It's a 6-way that should be going up this year. So I'm not going to get too much into power splitters, but if you run more than one antenna, you need one. So of sorts, they can be made out of cable, they can be made out of metal. There's a couple different ways, and it's somewhat above my pay grade on how to make them. So one of the sites that I use to get equipment, ideas, and stuff is W6PQL. This is a fabulous website for finding out different stuff that you might want to build, stuff that you might want to incorporate into your station. He has different well, he tells you what he's using. Let's say for a 144 2 meters, an LDMOS amplifier. You can buy this. You can get it in kit form. You can buy different parts and pieces of it. there's the pallet right there, and on the right hand side in this picture you can see a Dow key relay. He's got some really good stuff on here. He's got preamps. As a matter of fact, I have a preamp here that I have used in the past. That's just a little preamp board, use a little device in there, and you can roll your own preamp pretty much. It won't have any filtering, so you probably want to put some filtering on there so that it keeps the noise at bay, I guess you could say. W6PQL has all kinds of other things. Left-hand side, where were we? Centimeter, block, brick, transverter. He also has a relay sequencer. He's got a 4-event sequencer, and this one was actually based upon his. So let's see, where's my next one? Another website here that might be good for some people is VU2NSB. He tells you about getting started in moonbounce communication. A lot of the stuff that I've already gone over. So you might want to take that down, VU2NSB and W6PQL. Those are a couple of websites you can get ideas from. Let's see. And let's see. My logbook here, what I've got, where was I? I wanted to brag that I've got China on moonbounce. You know that there seems to be, even on HF, there seems to be like a force field around North Korea, China, Mongolia. It's just nobody know how it talks to those people, but I was able to get it in the log. Now this is the second Chinese guy I've gotten a log. I've got a QSL card acknowledging receipt from China, JT65, and he would be on my moon set. So maybe the last 10 minutes or so of my moon set is when my chance is to get him. So when the leaves are off the trees, because the leaves suck up RF, especially at higher frequencies, that's when you want to get them. So I find my most furthest out contacts on moonrise, and my furthest out moon contacts on moon set by what I see. And let's see, just lately, I think I got in a log. Well, I didn't even log them yet. But some of the ones that recently that I've had a couple of, well, you see, remember we had, what was it? On HF, they had the last man standing, KA6LMS. Some people on HF may have worked a bunch of different stations. Well, I actually worked them on EME right here. W6M, I worked. Looks like I worked them twice, huh? And KA6M. So I worked W6M on EME. He was one of the bonus stations because I worked on I worked a bunch of the other ones from HF. But here I worked Russia on 432 UB4AA. I talked about this guy here, W2HRO. I worked him on 432.070. He's been doing this for a long time. And one of the big guns, UA3 PTW. If I was to look him up, I might be able to see, let's see, UA3 PTW. I believe he has quite an array. So yes, that is his array that we seen earlier. So he does pretty good moon bounce contests, and he's always on. I think that he could have been first place this year in the ARRL EME contest. I was lucky enough this year for my first time to compete in this contest. I was 10th in the world in single operator, high power, all band. So I did well, I only did it once, so that's my best. And I would have to say that ends my my EME communication session here. And I'll take any questions or.
Okay, anybody got questions or comments? We appreciate it. What, Larry, why don't you end sharing your screen, and then we can see all the people here.
Okay. There we go. Thank you.
So, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. Any questions before I give our summary here? Oh, somebody,
Yeah.
Tim Barrett. Go
Hi,
ahead, Tim.
yeah, this is Tim. So I have this has really been fascinating, Larry. Thanks. Um, Something I've always wondered, with HF, you have to worry about propagation and where is where are the bands open to? And I guess that when you're using EME, then propagation doesn't really matter. But is it kind of a crapshoot where your signal is going to come down because it's bouncing off the rough moon surface? So obviously the other station must be able to see the moon, but whether you get into Canada or China, is it just luck or is it something that you can control?
Okay, I'd have to say it's nothing that I can control. All right. The propagation will, your signal is going to be scattered along whoever can see the moon, wherever it is, whether it's whether they're in the east or they're in the west.
Right.
Your signal is bounced off the moon and it's scattered all over that. Now, if you talk about propagation, what you have is some stuff coming into play. We talked about Faraday rotation. I would say that would be considered as some sort of propagation. I could be wrong technically, but when the way that a signal propagates itself and goes up to the moon and back, it's going to change its polarization because of Faraday. Same thing with the I'd have to look back at my notes here, but the some of the stuff that I talked about earlier that has to do with the propagation and the way that it will come back to the Earth, including one-way propagation where you can see their signal or hear their signal and they can't hear you at all or can't see your signal at all. And I would say that would be EME type of propagation.
That's interesting. And also, I mean, are most of your contacts scheduled by, online beforehand, or can you just call CQ and see what you get?
Well, you can call CQ, and some people have SDR type radios, and they can see the whole spectrum. So when they see a signal over there, you don't even have to be in a chat room, but that's the easiest way to let somebody tell somebody, hey, I'm calling CQ on 133 first period. If you want to come look for me there, that you'd say,
Yeah.
this is where I'm at. Or you can just call CQ somewhere and you'll get responses, people looking at that frequency. Also, the chat rooms that I talked about, that's going to tell people where you're at and what frequency you're at, what period you're on, and hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much.
All right, Keith, go ahead.
Yeah, is there a minimum amount of power on 2 meters and 70 centimeters that you'd say that is necessary to actually do EME?
All right. Well, it depends upon one, your antennas, and two, the antennas of the station on the other side. If you're talking to a big gun, I bet you could make a QSO with 120 watts or 100 watts. Because like I said in that presentation, there's a guy, 9 Yankee 4 David. I was trying to work him today. I could see him. He's got a 4x9. He's got the same antenna setup that I've got. He's got 120 watts. That's it. And I could see him at minus 28. I can make a QSO at minus 28. Unfortunately, he couldn't see me. Why? Because of possible one-way propagation. I can see him, and we've got the same antennas, but I've got, 3, 6, 9, maybe 12 dB more signal than him, power going out, but he still couldn't see me. He couldn't copy me. Actually, if I'm remembering this correctly, there was more than one caller, and he could not decode any of them. So he may have seen my trace, but not be able to decode it. So, 100 watts probably with a good antenna. If you had twice the antenna that I've got, maybe you could use 50 watts. I will say, I was working a guy on 432 one time, and he kept saying, Roger, 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 Roger. What the heck's going on here? my PA had went south. The transformer burned up. So I didn't have any more signal going out. He wanted to complete the QSO. So what did I do? Well, I tried to change fuses. I blew a fuse, this and that. So I shot him with 75 watts and he got my 7.3 and completed the QSO. So on 432 with about 20 dB a gain with antennas, I was able to finish that QSO with 75 watts. So, and I think the higher up in frequency you go, the less you probably can use because you'll be using bigger and better antennas. They take up less room. Like 1296 and up, the bigger the dish, the better. And I had marginal antennas when I was working the big guns during the contest. So,
So is 75 watts EME considered QRP?
yes, definitely QRP.
Okay. Very good. Any more questions? I got a couple of comments to make here.
Jamie,
Yeah, go ahead, Jamie.
Thank you. So if I understood you, you mentioned something earlier about being able to hear yourself with JT65. But before that, I was wondering, is there any way with a mid-sized station like you have, can you hear yourself going, did it, and then hear your own echo with your ears? Or is that too much out of the question without a massive station?
Presently, I cannot hear my own echo. I've tried. To hit my foot switch, hit CW, dot it, wait 2.5 seconds, nothing. When I can hear my echo, that'll be the day. It may be sometime next year or this year if I get things up that I'd like to get up. I'll have some different antennas with more gain, and I'd really love to hear my echo. That'd be great. Sideband QSOs have been known to be made. I know W3OAB John Gilly, he said that they were making a sideband contact with a station in Canada that had a big dish, and he could actually hear the people in the background talking. So, and for what it's worth, I believe that Arecibo, they had used only like 4 watts at Arecibo to make EME contacts, and it may have been on sideband. I think they've got over 40 something dB gain there, 42 or more. But unfortunately, it's pretty much defunct at the moment, and it may be coming back, and it may not. I guess we'll have to see.
But so, is there a JT65 mode where you can hear your echo?
Well, there is an echo mode that I've never tried. So on JT65, you probably can hear your echo, but I've never tried it, and I believe it has echo mode. And if it's not JT65, it's MAP65 that has that. Okay,
so. It sounds like how would you even know if you're working? You put all this stuff together and you just pray that it works, and you try to hear other people, and if you can hear them, that's a pretty good shot.
You jump up and down.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what I did. I was, because I put the stuff I bought. I was looking at this. I was looking at this amplifier online. It was a K2RIW design. It's got a couple of tubes in it. It needed a power supply. So I was looking at it, and actually I was been drinking that night. And I had me and my wife were there, and we had a few. So I hit the button, and I got that amplifier for $187.50. Okay, great. Now I got to build a power supply for it. And I found the parts and pieces. I built the power supply. I actually got it to work. And then I put the station together with the WSJT and that stuff and got that all to work. It was a big project. And, I made my first QSOs with about 500 watts going to 2 9-element antennas. And, I was able to work a lot of different people, and I had a lot of fun. And the first time I made it, I think my first one was RX1AS. I looked for a big dog so I could make sure that I was, because I tried and I just wasn't doing it. What's going on? I didn't know much of anything about EME. I was hoping that I was on the moon. I'd go out there and I'd look down the beam, and right at the moon, I'd be out there at 4 a.m, looking down the beam and making sure it's up on the moon. But, I was able to make the QSO, and it was on from there.
Very good.
Thank you.
Anything further? Karl Heinz just posted, oh, that's direct to me. Thank you. Never mind. um, and I will be sending out the YouTube. We're recording, and it will be available. And I will send it out. It'll be on our website link, and also I'll send it out to the participants here that arrived today. And you can all watch this and get the details again if you need a refresher. Larry, I want to. This will wrap up our Elmer's Corner. Let me get this over here. And this concludes the Elmer's Corner of the Rochester Amateur Radio Association. This session was recorded, and I'll be posting the link to the recording in to the participants, and it'll be on our RaRa website. Thank you, Larry, for sharing your knowledge and experiences. Great comments in the chat room from people that had to leave. They really enjoyed the information that you shared with us.
Thank you.
Upcoming events, VE testing. The April session is full. We've got 20 people already registered for that. The May session last night had 10 slots available. So if you plan on testing, you're upgrading, please get to the website, and the link is on our website, and it's hamstudy.org is who we're using to coordinate our registrations. Pick, select a session, and then scroll down to the May 15th and log in there to make your reservations. May 22nd, coming up, we're having an outside academy in person, COVID safe, at Black Creek Park. It's a hands-on operation. We'll be doing antenna launching, different setups. We're going to use Bill Hopkins is going to show his fishing pole technique. I got Paul Conaway coming to show his air cannon, and I'm going to show my Armstrong method. I use a weight and some mason's line, and I get him pretty high up. Also, we'll be doing a build of a demonstration build of a 20 and 15 meter dipole construction demo by John Vigiano, he's our extra class instructor, and he's also be doing test equipment showing his VNA of that antenna once we've raised it with the antenna cords we threw up earlier in the afternoon. We're also going to have Karl Heinz is going to put on a POTA operation with his vertical and his POTA station that's parks on the air, and hopefully we can make some QSOs there. We're going to have Jeff Sonstein with a QRP demonstration with his big orange 30-foot whip antenna as fiberglass pole. I'm going to have a couple of HF rigs out there to operate and operate some single sideband and test equipment demos, antenna analyzers, dummy loads, things that new people may want to see and buy for their own station. Working on a soldering demo for people that want to learn how to solder or see how to do some practice soldering. Still working on a digital presentation for JT8. I have not found anyone that would yet be willing to put on a short or a demo. Now, even with many antennas, we'll probably be operating 40 and 20. So these things are going to be time sliced, like 30 minutes a piece. Each station will be allotted 30 minutes to make some contacts, and we'll transfer it to another operation, then maybe back again. I don't want to cross band and have too much QRM, but we will be testing out RaRa's brand new bandpass filters that we purchased through members' donations. Some of the members are right here that donated, and thank you very much for your points donation that allow us to buy these bandpass filters. Come out and see them in operation. There are only a few slots left. I am COVID limited by the parks regulations to how many people we can have in that. Anybody attending will have to wear a mask and social distance. If you're putting up antennas and you're 20 yards away, you can drop your mask as far as I'm concerned. But if you're up close to people, other than using a microphone to get on the air, I would like you to have your masks on and in use. We will have hand sanitizers at every station. They'll be around the park, the pavilion there. So before you handle anybody's equipment, wash your hands. Washing your hands is the best way to keep safe, no matter what you're doing or what the situation. All right, let's anything else. You can register for the academy if you want to at sending an email to education@rochesterham.org. With that, I thank you very much for participating, and I hope you have a great weekend. It's a great day out. I'm glad you gave some of your morning to us to participate. Now I'm going to go outside and do some outside work, I think. Very limited, but a little bit. Thank you very much, Larry. I really appreciate your time. And John, for your kibitzing in there, I appreciate that too. All right, gentlemen, you have a great day.
Thank you to you, Tim. Also.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Nice to
Jim.
see everybody.
Thanks, Larry.
Bye. Thank you, Larry.